Are you applying to the Rotman MBA program in Canada this year? And if you have looked at that application and if you are wondering how to go about answering the questions, please stay with me till the end of this video. I'm going to give you strategies on how to tackle the written essays as well as provide you some tips on how to handle the video essay component. Well, if you have not done so already, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe this channel and also hit the bell icon so that way you get updated about all the fresh content that we have for you on MBA applications. We're going to come up with a lot of updates, a lot of videos every week, and this way we will just stay connected. Well, let's start with the Rotman MBA program. And over the last few years, there has been a huge, surge in the interest to applying to Canada. That's number one. And I think in this, Rotman has been able to clearly position itself as the leader of the pack. So if I were to compare it to let's say an Ivy or a Queen's or a Schulich, I think great schools, but I think Rotman really has been able to establish that if you are looking at Canada, this is the top school, right? And why Canada? Well, I think in terms of visa, especially not just for you, but also for your spouse, it becomes a lot easier for you to work in Canada. Agreed that the economy is a lot smaller than, let's say, the United States. But if you do get a work permit and if you are able to establish yourself in, let's say, Toronto, then it becomes a lot easier for you to travel to the US and perhaps seek future, work opportunities. And then there is also this other thing about having the Canadian PR, which will also give, you better options, both inside and outside of Canada. So I think that's the kind of aspect that attracts a lot of people to the Rotman MBA program. The second thing is in terms of the program itself. I think what they have as their USP, what they have is this positioning of what is called as integrative thinking. If you go to their website, they have it, and I think it's a very interesting concept. And if you think about it, what it really says is there is a part of your decision making that relies on intellect. Right? It relies on you using data, you using judgment, right? That's a very Anglo-Saxon way of looking at it, right? You just look at it and say, well, where is the data, right? That's how a lot of American companies also work. But what Rotman is saying is that, well, along with all of this, you also need to kind of get your intuition, right? The whole human factor of assessing risk in a particular scenario, trying to be creative when you come up with a solution, try to think beyond the constraints that are available to you, try to use quality as a factor, not just quantity. Sometimes, when you look at great design, right? Yes, there is a logic or a science behind it, but there is also a human part. And I think this is a very Eastern way of looking at it, where we look at things very holistically. So, Rotman really gives you the power to kind of combine both of these, that you are driven by intellect and, data, but at the same time, you're not losing the human factor of it. And I think that makes the integrative, approach. And they have coined this term, they call it a new way of thinking. And I absolutely agree. In today's world, I think we can definitely not go with one approach only, that we are looking at only data, can be very misleading. But at the same time, we can't just go with our gut feel of how things are. So I think just go to the website, spend some time trying to understand more about the program. We had 2 students. In fact, the last couple of years, we have had like 1 student getting in almost every year. I'm going to link it out to a video where we have Abhinandan talking about his experience at Rotman. He worked with me, and I also have Akshat who also worked with me, and they are giving their debrief of how that experience was for them getting into Rotman. In fact, Akshat even got in with a sizable scholarship. Now let's look at the essay questions. They seem to have 2 questions. It's actually one, and that question is this: explain your spike factor, something unique about yourself that you believe will contribute to the Rotman community and is aligned with Rotman values. Up to 1,000 words. Now, first of all, before you approach this essay, I want you to take a step back and I want you to really think about it, because How you write this essay, I think, is secondary. I think what is important is that you take a step back and say, what is that one wow factor? What is that one spike in your life, right? That one thing that makes you stand out. So this is really very clearly calling out for your USP, that is unique selling proposition. What is different about you? What is, why should Rotman really look into you? So you need to talk about that spike. Okay. Now, just to make your life a little easier, right? There are essentially 3 categories in which you will typically see a spike. So the first spike could be in terms of education. It could be in terms of what you have done, in terms of your background. Maybe you're academically gifted, maybe you're a gold medalist, maybe there was something that, you cracked some exams. So maybe there is something, maybe you have a patent to your name, maybe you have research papers, something that is more academic in nature, right? That could be a spike for you. And I know a lot of people who are brilliant, right? And they have achieved so much, and that really is what makes them stand out. The second could be related to your work. And I have seen people who have been kind of average, mediocre when it came to education, but once they got into the workforce, they just showed, right? They just, were able to, be head and shoulders above everyone else, and they were able to get quick career progression. They were able to get faster promotions. They had more roles and responsibilities. They were able to create, larger impact. They might have started off in one function, but they were able to move across to other functions very quickly. So they got that cross-functional exposure. Or it could be a third thing that is not related either to academics or to work experience, but something like your extracurriculars, right? Maybe you're a musician, maybe you play a musical instrument very well, maybe you are a person who is who runs a marathon, right? So something about what you have done which is different and something that not many people would do. So I think what we would really like to know is the first thing, which is what is your spike? What is that one thing? And once you've figured out what is that one thing, then you need to kind of corroborate why you feel that is something that is unique to you. Otherwise, it is your claim that this is what makes you unique. And now there are kind of 2 related questions to it if you think about it. So the first one says, how are you going to contribute to the Rotman community? Correct? So it's very specifically asking, how is that skill going to help you directly, right? How is it going to help your classmates? And the second thing is they are also asking you to align it with what they call as the Rotman values, right? So what are the values? Let's have a look. So the first thing that they have is diversity, then they have excellence, they have integrity, and then they have respect, right? So let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of, let's say, a student who talks about his experience, right, in figuring out new apps. So he is like the whiz kid when it comes to figuring out new apps on the mobile phone. He is like a productivity junkie, right? He just likes to kind of take something and he likes to, so he actually has a blog where he talks about various apps, and he also has a social media handle on Twitter and Instagram where he actually posts about his reviews of various apps. So this is not a review of gadgets, right? That's a different category. This is a review of apps, right? Like for example, photography, he would review like 5 apps and tell you what is the best app to use. Now, why is this a spike factor for him? Because he was a normal IT engineer. When I say normal IT engineer, like, software engineer with about 4 or 5 years experience. But, if he's going to talk about his spike being that he is like a great employee, I mean, he got maybe a promotion or so. He joined off as an intern and then he went on to become a software engineer, and then he got like a promotion as a software engineer level 2 or something. So he didn't have a lot to show in terms of his career progression. In terms of his education, it was kind of, he did great but he did not do something outstanding. It wasn't a spike factor. He wasn't the top 25% in the class, right? So he decided that my spike is going to come from the extracurricular part, and that's where he spoke about this thing. And he said, look, what it really means is that I am a person who tries to optimize everything, right? And his goal was to become a operations consultant, right? But he said, look, that's my goal. I go and I stand in the airport lines, and I'm also, trying to mentally figure out, could they have made this efficient, right? Why is this guy checking it? Why is there a double checking there? Why can't we directly go? So, he's thinking about processes. He's thinking about optimization. He's thinking about improving efficiency. Great spike factor, right? Now, why is it a 5 spike factor? He's already explained that, I got this blog and I have this social media following, and people kind of listen to what advisor I have, right? So that's there. Now, how does that benefit the Rotman MBA community? And he said, in 2000, the year that we are in, the current state that we are in, right? 2020 is going to be a year when there are 2020, 2021. Just think about it, right? The amount of innovation that is going to happen, right? And there is just like a vast array of choices out there. And he says, everything that you think that you can do, probably an app is helping you do it better. Correct? So he said the first thing that I would like to do, and I understand that most of the student clubs at Rotman are student driven, and he picked a couple of clubs, and he said, I would like to look at the processes. I would like to see whether I can bring technology to make it more efficient, right? Can I make the processes more efficient? And that's really what I would do in terms of contribution, correct? And in terms of the Rotman values, what he felt was, among all the 4, he felt that excellence was really the one that helped him. He said that for me, I always set the bar, and then for me, it is to do a little better than that, right? So that's what defines who I am. So that's really how, the essay has to be constructed. You have 1,000 words, and that's a lot of words, right? Most schools, you realize, stop at about 500 words max, but this time you have 1,000 words, which also means that you should not become very so what I've seen is, the moment students get more words, they feel that it's an opportunity for me to talk more, to write more, but you need to have the same discipline in what you're writing. You should not try to digress away from the topic, correct? One of my, so people, what they do, they will go to the Rotman values, and they will say, okay, let me pick something, and they'll say, I am very honest, or I am very sincere, correct? And then they will go on to talk about a particular story where they were subject to some kind of pressure, but they did not give in to that pressure. And they say, hey, this is why I'm sincere. And, when I work with all the student community, you expect me to be honest and upfront, and I'll make sure that I uphold the brand value of Rotman. And this ties very well with the, value that Rotman has, which is integrity. Reading this essay is not really going to get me excited about you, because, there is really nothing spiky. So I think it has to be spiky. I think picking that is going to be the key for this essay, correct? So I would then, start talking about the spike factor, explain why it is a spike factor, then go on, talk about how I'm going to impact Rotman. Be very specific. If you can name clubs, if you can talk to students, if you can talk to alumni, try to get to understand that a little better. And then, as I said, finally, tie it to your Rotman, values. Don't try to retrofit. Ask yourself, is this something that I genuinely believe in, right? And only then should you go ahead and pick that value. Now, here is an interesting twist they have. They also have the second essay, which is optional, but in our case, I would say, let's look at it as a compulsory essay. It says, please upload 1 to 3 of your spikiest pictures to the supplemental items section of your application here. Note, your photos must be uploaded as a single PDF. So now you have said that this is the spike factor in my life, and you have picked one spike factor. I'm pretty sure that you would have some kind of data or evidence to corroborate it, correct? So for example, in this case, since he was tweeting, right, one of those, let's say tweets, got viral, and it kind of got picked by many people, and it got retweeted, let's say a few thousand times, he can actually have a picture of that tweet, right, of it basically being retweeted and said, look, that's a spike. I wrote a review about a particular app. People liked it so much that it was shared a lot on social media. Correct? Here is one more example of how he could have actually taken the spike factor. He could have actually taken a screenshot of his blog, of his Google Analytics, right, which shows the number of visitors to his blog, if that's what he wanted to showcase. If he wanted to showcase just the content, then just maybe a screenshot of the website itself. Maybe a picture of him, let's say, I'm just making this up, right? Receiving an award. Let's say if you were to receive an award and you have a picture of that and that corresponds to the story that you just told, that's great, because it tells me that whatever you're telling me, there is some kind of recognition that you've got for that as well. And I've had students come and say, Arun, but I don't have any pictures, or something happened, at a point in life when there were no cameras, or people like, I just didn't take a picture. No problem, right? If you don't have a picture, if you don't have, let's say, a PR mention, let's say you are mentioned in the newspaper or something, if you don't have that kind of a validation, you don't have a certificate, that's perfectly okay, right? I've had students, who have actually used in the spikiest moment pictures like a visiting card, right? And they said, this is the first visiting card that I ever had in my life, right? Everything that I learned was on this job. Right? So you can be a little creative. It need not be a picture as such. It could be a picture of a building, right? Maybe that was the building that you work for, right? As I said, going back to this example of a person who's writing reviews for apps, the example that he could have, given is probably the first app that he wrote a review for, right? Now that gives a story, because he says, when I wrote that blog on that particular app, I had no idea, right? But I really loved the process and I got great feedback, right? Which helped me write all the other posts or articles later on, correct? So try to be a little creative in the kind of pictures that you pick, but I wouldn't worry too much on this aspect. Put all of them into one PDF and upload it along with the previous essay. Now coming to the other part that Rotman is famous for, which is the video essays, right? And I know that you're probably thinking that what should I do? How do I go about it? Don't worry, I will tell you a couple of easy ways for you to handle this task. Right? But before I get there, I just wanted to let you know that everyone who's applying to Rotman has to go through the video essay part, right? So if you feel that you are in a disadvantage, remember that everyone else applying is at an equal disadvantage, because a lot of times we are not very comfortable, speaking impromptu, speaking in front of the camera, right? Right now, I have this whole thing completely unscripted. There is no teleprompter. I'm just speaking out what I feel is the response to this particular question. So it takes time for you to kind of develop that comfort of talking impromptu. But I think at this point, what you can do is get the essentials, right? First of all, this is called the Kira platform, Kira, and I think it was developed at the University of Toronto, right? So I think it's kind of, Rotman has been using it for many years now. So what you're going to be given is, you're going to be given 2 video essays. Typically there is a 30-second, time for you to look at the prompt and try to understand what that prompt is telling you. So let me give you a prompt, okay, that actually a student got. It said, what is that one thing that you have learned from a mentor who has, worked closely with you? Now, anybody who's worked should have had something that they have learned from someone. So none of these questions are questions that they're going to say, what is the capital of this country, right? Most of these questions would be questions where they're going to ask you, or it could be something like, why MBA, correct? Or, what do you think is that one strength that you think makes you stand out? Tell us about a time that you failed as a leader, right? What did you learn? So these are all questions that you will know or will have an answer to, but the trick is to do it in under 30 seconds, because you have 30 seconds to think. What I would suggest, first of all, open your laptop, correct? You don't need any external mic. Use the mic that is given along with your laptop. You have the microphone, you have the camera that is looking at you. Make sure that it's at a position that your face is, very clearly seen right in front of the, Just try to imagine that there is a rectangle. Your face should kind of be somewhere in the middle, right? A lot of times the angle is, either too low or it can be too high. causing a little, it just makes the video a little unappealing, right? Not that they're going to dock you for it, but still. Make sure that the source of light is in front of you. Make sure that you're sitting in a place which is kind of quiet. I will give you a very interesting thing. So one of my students actually had this Rotman video essay, and he was by himself, at his house. It was like 8:39 in the evening, absolutely no chance of any visitors coming over. And he opened the laptop. He said, okay, all ready, took a deep breath, right? I am a big believer in taking a deep breath just to reset yourself. He did that and he started the video essay. And just at that time, someone started ringing the bell. Correct? It was probably a neighbor. But the point is that, he kind of got defocused because his brain was like, I just wanted the, bell to stop ringing. So make sure that you're taking care of small things like that, right? For example, your phone, make sure that you put it on silent, right? You don't want unnecessary interruptions while you're shooting. The Kira platform itself offers a way by which you can actually test out by answering a couple of sample questions. My suggestion is to utilize it to the maximum. Go ahead, give it a spin, try to see how you're able to come up with these answers. Keep 8 to 10 stories with you. Just try to think what you could say, and you could always just go through a set of sample interview questions, for example, and that should help you. Now, when the camera starts and the timer, so once the 30 seconds gets over, the camera is going to start recording. So in those 30 seconds, it's best for you to have a paper and a pencil or a pen. And what you're really doing is, in the 30 seconds, just quickly note down a few points so that mentally you are able to structure the essay or structure the response. Now what you do is, while you are speaking, is it okay for you to look down? Perfectly okay, don't worry. You're not expected to be a genius who's just going to get on his feet and unscripted speak for 2 minutes non-stop, right? So that's okay, but try doing that. Once you have handled these two essays, right, the video essays, there is also a written response they have. So I'm just going to read out what they had as the written response the previous year so that you get a sense of it. So here is the written response. So they said, craft an email to the Rotman. So before that they had this background. So they said, often prospective MBA candidates build strong relationships primarily online with the admissions commit office. We encourage candidates to follow up with the admissions team members they meet representing Rotman around the world. So this is the background. And then it says, craft an email to the Rotman representative that you met at a recent MBA fair, reiterating your interest in the school and desire to stay connected. Well, what this is really looking at is, it is looking at your ability to communicate. So think about it. They have got your essay. They looked at your creativity in picking the 3 stories or the 3 images. They looked at your ability to impromptu deliver on a particular prompt, and now they are also testing you on a way to check how do you react impromptu to, let's say, writing an email, which is what is required in the corporate world, correct? So I would say there is really no way for you to just plan it in advance. I would say this is a letter that you need to have, you can think of it. You would probably address that person. The first thing that you would say in that email is to thank that person for that time, correct? I'm just giving the easy bits out. So introduction, where you're going to thank that person and tell them how much you valued the fact that, they spent time with you, correct? In the end, you are going to thank them. I'm going to come back to the body again. In the end, you're going to thank them and you want to say that it was great, catching up. I'm going to connect with you on LinkedIn, right? Make it sound what you would write in real life, right? You would want to connect with that person on LinkedIn, say, hey, I'm going to send you a LinkedIn invite separately. It was great catching up with you. Let's stay in touch. And then you have your closure. Now, what the body would say is your interest for Rotman, and you can create a hypothetical scenario that you have already spoken to that person, and you could say just 2 things. A, as discussed, what is it that is unique about me? You want to reiterate that. You want to just tell them what is unique in your personality that you think you would bring value to the school. And B, why you think that school makes most sense for you. This is really a wide Rotman essay. If you think about it, The actual essay was talking about you, your spikiest thing. You never had an opportunity to say why Rotman, and this is the place for you to do so. So try to craft that email. You have 5 minutes. So what I would suggest is maybe you spend the first 30 seconds just taking a deep breath, just looking at it. Okay, what do I need to write? Just make sure that you write down all the points so that you don't forget it. Spend the next 3.5 minutes typing it out, okay, and at least save the last 1 minute for doing proofreading. And if nothing else, just we tend to underestimate the time required for these things, right? So we think, 3 minutes but sometimes what may happen is you're just typing out something and you realize that you missed something, right? Or maybe you copy pasted something and things got messed out. So make sure that you are kind of avoiding that also, right? So that's really what's going to happen. So you're going to have the first essay, then you're going to have the 3 pictures, followed by that you're going to have the 2 timed prompt, and then you're going to have the timed response where you need to write in the platform. I hope this video was useful. As I said, we have worked with students who have gotten into Rotman successfully. We know what it takes for you to get into that school, but we understand that you may be a little apprehensive about your chances. You may have questions about the school, or you may have questions about doing an MBA in Canada. Please let us know. We would be happy to help clarify any of your doubts and see what we can do to work together to help improve your probability of getting into a top B school this year. Go ahead and fill out the free profile evaluation form. I'm giving it in the link over here, and someone in my team will get in touch with you and we will try to see how we can work together to help you. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, please go ahead and leave it in the comments below. And as always, keep watching.